Are you in the process of starting something new and you're fearful? You have many elements ready, but you are waiting for the thing? If so, listen out. I have something special for you. In fact, so special that I couldn't wait another week to share it with you on the 15th. Today, we are 1 year old. Can you believe it? And I am here to tell you about the process, the fear, and of course, the thing that got me started this journey. So go ahead, grab your cup of tea and join me in this very special episode of Empowering Conversations. Hello and welcome to the Empowering Conversations podcast, a place to get inspired, challenged, and empowered by stories of immigrants who build their success from zero. I'm your host, Mehran. Today marks the 1 year anniversary of Empowering Conversations podcast, our podcast. And as I'm reflecting back, I'm blown away by what we achieved as an immigrant community in the past year. We've been downloaded close to 10,000 times and listened to across the globe, from the United States to Canada, Belgium, UK, Greece, Iran, Turkey, Japan, Sweden, Norway, UAE, and more. This is huge. This is huge, and I don't take this achievement for granted. But it didn't happen overnight. The idea of a podcast crossed my mind somewhere in 2017, where our previous president kept hammering immigrants and labeling them for the very qualities that made this country the greatest nation on earth. Now, if you are his fan, please bear with me here. I'm not getting into the politics or saying everything he did was wrong. I'm sure he made many great decisions. What I'm talking about here is the discrimination and the language he used on immigrants and minorities. I think we all agree that it was a bit too harsh. It focused on the worst of us rather than the best of our community. After all, we immigrants left behind our families, our jobs, and our sense of belonging to create our dream life in the States. And along the way, we contributed tremendously to the economy and technology. And that's how we made almost half of Fortune 500 founders. So it kind of bothered me as he hammered me, my child, and my community. But I needed the thing. I remember when he implemented the Muslim ban that year, I was furious. Not because my family couldn't visit me anymore, because I was able both financially and legally to go back for a visit. But because many immigrant mothers from Iran, Iraq, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, and Yemen had to deliver their babies alone. Because their American-born children wouldn't know how it feels to be hugged, kissed, and spoiled by their grandparents, their aunts, their uncles. And soon, they might even be discriminated for no fault of their own. These were immigrant children, you know? The ones that could have established another company, another business, and make the world a better place for everyone. Now, don't get me wrong. We all appreciate safety. That's the very reason many immigrants migrated. But the rhetoric and the actions were just difficult to bear. Knowing all of that, I had a fire in my belly, but I needed the thing. In 2018, inspired by a book, I wrote a speech for my Toastmasters community. It was a big hit. They cheered me and said, Mehran, this is worthy of a TED Talk. You can be part of the upcoming election speakers encouraging minorities and immigrants to vote. I didn't do the TED Talk. I didn't take action because I needed the thing. Early 2019, I started planning the podcast. The idea was simple. Our podcast was about zero to hero stories of immigrants who succeeded in building their lives from scratch. My hope was moderating, empowering conversations that enabled our listeners to build the life they dreamed of with the limited resources they had at hand. But I still needed the thing. During a brainstorming coffee time with a friend, she said, "What is your definition of success, Mehran?" I thought for a moment. Success has different meaning for people. For someone who fled the war and terror and saw their family or friend being eaten alive can simply be survival. For someone who helped refugees to acclimate during the first years of their arrival, success is changing someone's life, even if that meant making no money. For the business owner, it might be sustaining through difficult times so that they don't have to let go of their employees. For a serial entrepreneur and investor, it means making the right investments that help the right companies to grow and even create more jobs. For the pharmaceutical CEO, it's developing the next drug that changes lives, some associated with money, some impact, some sense of giving. It has different meaning and it depends on the path. She nodded as she sipped her coffee and said, "It's a great thing, Mehran. Do it." But I needed the thing. Mid-2019, I started sending invites to my immigrant friends, colleagues. I posted on social media looking for successful immigrants. 200 emails and invitations were sent. Very few responded. Most with a congratulatory message or showing interest, but asking for a sample episode, which was non-existent at the time. I understood. I explained. But many follow-up emails were left unanswered. I continued sending emails and connecting until few people agreed to sign the waiver and be on the show. I was beyond myself, especially when, aside from two close friends, Salma and Homa, who were my guests on the 2nd and 6th episode, Dr. D and Nelson joined the tribe of supporters. You know, it's one thing that your friends support you, and it's another when the outside community grants you their trust, especially if they are known and respected in their field. Dr. D was a busy high-risk OBGYN who not only managed his 2 practices, but also led a nonprofit organization called Miracle Babies. I remember the day vividly. I dressed up and double-checked the paperwork, the microphone, the recorder, and the computer. I had backup for everything. It was my first episode, and I was nervous. Being early, I offered to stop by and get him something at the local Starbucks. "That's so sweet of you, Mehran. I'll have triple espresso on ice with almond milk." I thought, since it's iced, I should get it when I'm closer to his location. As luck had it, the Starbucks in the hospital was closed that day, and I had to drive 15 minutes to get to another one. As I was checking my phone for the nearest Starbucks, a cop pulled me over and fined me $160 for texting and driving. What was I thinking? He asked, "Was it an urgent text you needed to reply?" I blushed. "I'm sorry. I'm running late for a very important meeting, and I'm letting them know. I'm really sorry." He gave me the ticket. Long story short, I arrived late to our interview with the coffee in my hands. But I was nervous. It was my first time. I had no idea how to connect with someone so quickly and ask the right questions to have the right story. I went with the script. He had done many interviews and it showed, and I was more nervous. But right there, I realized there is a reason that his patients loved him so much and followed him for years. He was patient, kind, and courteous throughout the interview and beyond. So I can never thank him enough for being one of the first believers in my effort. Another supporter was Dr. Nelson Chau, VP of Research at Logitech Bio. Although I knew Nelson from the previous company I worked for, the level of support, encouragement, and sincerity I felt during our conversations was beyond my imagination. He kept saying, "Mehran, my story is boring. I didn't experience the level of obstacles many immigrants face to be here." And I kept saying, every story is different and unique on its own way. And as you will hear on the third episode, it was about his attitude. Yes, he wasn't a refugee having to cross the border worried about his life, but throughout his professional life, he had the right attitude that made him succeed in climbing the corporate ladder as an immigrant. As many of you know, the right attitude can make or break our careers, especially for some of us coming from hierarchical and patriarchal cultures. One of the things he taught me during the show was that 95% of people are there to support you. You don't know how many times I faced challenges, and this quote, along with his pancake quote, helped me. Do you remember his pancake quote? That it's always two sides to the story, just like the pancake? If you haven't listened to this episode, make sure you do. The trust he bestowed on me and in the future of the show, along with his pragmatic view of obstacles, is what I needed during those times. And he compassionately gifted it to me. So thank you, Nelson. Now I can't say enough about the role Salma or Homa played in encouraging me and pushing me and connecting me with their network. I could never thank them enough. And of course, my husband. But as you might imagine, his role was a little tricky. You know what I mean? I'm telling you all of this to show when we are starting something new, even if we believe in the cause and we know our why, we might not believe in our ability to pull it off, to manage it, and to sustain it long term. The fear of failure is huge. Not only we need early adopters and sincere supporters and the faith that it'd be okay and that we will learn along the way, but we also need the thing that could bring everything to life. And I didn't have it. Instead, I experienced this numbness in my leg and my feet whenever I thought about the podcast. They became this block of ice. They slowed me down more than my perfectionism did. I needed to warm them up, either with a heating pad, a blanket, a pair of thick socks, a hot bath, or the combination of all. I procrastinated and I pushed it off, hoping that magically something will happen and I don't have to sit through the pain anymore. As I waited, the pain strengthened and moved toward my chest, my heart, and my head. Migraine attacks were more frequent and I was dysfunctional for days. During that period, I was so disappointed with myself. So disappointed that I postponed the only class I took as self-care. I said to myself, the day you start your podcast, you will dance again. Until then, sit and sulk. A little rough, I know, but I was upset with myself. Do you know what the thing was? Did you guess it yet? Any idea? Listen up. It's something funny and interesting. December 27, 2019, my brother called as we were taking pictures in the flower gardens of Caesar Palace in Las Vegas. We were coming back from our yearly ski trip. My mind was fresh. My feet was slightly stronger, I guess, or the boots were keeping them warm. I don't know. Because the moment he suggested a 3-day Brendan Burchard event, I trusted his suggestion and booked my seat using the coupon code he sent me. I blocked the days on my calendar, and despite the guilt I felt having to be away from my family during a weekend, I went. 99% of the material I knew. I read them before. I even taught them to my clients. But I sat through it looking for the thing. On February 22nd, 2020, when Jamie Kern-Lima, founder of IT Cosmetics, talked about her fear of starting her business, I perked up. My feet grew numb again. You know what was on my mind. My podcast and the fear of starting it. I wanted to get up and get a cup of tea to use it as a heating source for my legs, but I couldn't. As I was sitting down rubbing my feet, she talked about how she found the thing. She was looking through art pieces in a local shop or a thrift store. I don't remember that. But what I remember is that her friend lifted up a picture frame with a picture in it. And she talked about the impact that picture had on her journey and gave her the push she needed. In the room that was lit with blue lights, 3 large pink screens showed the picture. And as she did, the entire 2,500 attendees burst into laughter. So did I. If you have your children listening, please turn down the voice, as I will be a little descriptive here. I'll wait for a second, don't worry. Ready? The picture was of a standing squirrel staring at us with 2 very large hanging testicles. If such squirrel could live in the wild, the testicles equaled his body weight. I found the thing. And no, the testicles were not the thing. As the laughter subsided, Jamie said, they bought the frame and hung it in her office as it symbolized courage for her. I snapped a picture of her with her squirrel, and that day decided to launch my podcast soon. And I thought about them on March 8th of last year, or in fact, any time my feet grew cold. And no, I don't mean men are more courageous than us women because of the parts that they have and we don't. No, I for one think of too many things when I'm making a decision. And sometimes I need to think less and show up with courage and be willing to fail. And I think many of us immigrants and minorities fall into the same trap. Maybe it's because we are born in cultures that care a lot about the community. Maybe it has to do with our communities that are not extremely supportive. I don't know. But what I know is that sometimes we have to think about the impact we could have on other people's lives. See, if I thought about that, I would have never worried about editing or the perfect music or the perfect mic or the perfect logo. The quote that comes to my mind is one of my guests on the 26th episode, Tabitha. She said, "Why do you have the luxury of waiting when people are suffering?" Here's the thing. We immigrants are the source of courage. It's already there. We left everything behind, and that's a courageous act. And I have nothing but gratitude to have started the podcast on March 8th of last year. I'm thankful to every individual that supported this journey. I faced many challenges, technical, emotional, not having guests that didn't know much English. I solved it all, and I am proud of it. And of course, I'm grateful for many people. Some I named in this podcast, some I didn't. I'm thankful to my early adopters, my friends, and every one of you who shared the episode with your friend and your colleague. And those of you who took the time to write me a review. Thank you. Thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. And most importantly, thank you to my husband, who by listening to every episode and giving me feedback, helped me improve, for pushing me when I was tired to continue. I'm thankful to my son for being extra quiet during my recording times, as he was home during most of it in the pandemic. My friend and my colleague Moji, whose help and input made the process much, much, much smoother. Thank you. I am forever grateful, and may we celebrate more milestones together. Are you also missing the thing? Did this episode provide you with the insight that you needed to jumpstart whatever you have been cooking in your mind? If so, congrats. Please pass it on to the next person who might be thinking of starting something new. But for those of you who are still doubting, let me remind you, as an immigrant, we are the source of the thing. Our very decision to move to a new country and start our life from zero is a testament to that. And if you're someone like me, even within the new home, you moved several times across the country. So you do have that extra ability to start everything from zero. Never forget that. But in case you need an extra reminder, like Jamie and her squirrel, shoot me an email. I'd be more than happy to send you the picture. You can also subscribe to my mailing list, where I share the episodes, the insights, the quotes, and the books immigrants read bi-weekly. If you're a woman listening to this episode, Happy International Women's Day. There was a reason that I started this episode last year on March 8th. If you're curious about it, hop on my Instagram and see the full video. As always, thank you for listening and sharing this episode with your friends and your colleagues. And I hope to have you and your friends on the next episode of Empowering Conversations.